Once you hit start. Oh, there it is. All right, we're just gonna give a minute to make sure that everybody has a chance to log in. I just clicked webinar live. So hey, Lauren Brown, raising your hand. I see you. How are you doing, friend? All right, guys, as you join in here, if you're not familiar with Wingnut Social, we are a digital marketing agency for the interior design industry, architects, general contractors, and adjacent verticals. And thank you so much for joining us on this first of a series of monthly webinars that we're going to be doing with guest experts, industry experts for marketing and for helping you to run your design business in a way that makes you more confident and what makes you more money? Yes, that's exactly right. So anything from digital marketing to business and systems and processes is what we cover. We also have the podcast by the same name, Wingnut Social, and let us know who's here. Raise your hand. If you guys could share on your stories and tag us so we can see who's joined us, and we'll share that in turn and get that exposure with our 8,000 some odd followers out there on Instagram. That would be great. Just tag Wingnut Social, tag Linda Holt. That would be super, super swell. Also, I wanted to let you know that coming soon, not only are we having the monthly webinars, and next month, if you guys heard Stacy Martin's episode 250, she talked about how to do your design presentations in such a way that she gets 95% approval rate from her clients. No pushback, no revisions, none of that wishy-washy. I'll know it. I'll know I like it when I see it kind of thing. And that lends itself to a very visual presentation. So that's going to be next month, same time, same bat channel. If you want to sign up so you can get the information and get the reminders of when those are going to happen, go over to wingnutsocial.com/wingnut/academy or -academy. Sign up to get those notifications and those announcements so you can be on top of the webinar series, and also so you can know when Wingnut Academy is launching. And Wingnut Academy is going to be a series of courses on how to implement a strategy and execute your digital marketing on all kinds of avenues, but we're starting with, of course, Instagram for interior designers, because that's the biggest, the lowest hanging fruit to make money for your design business. So that is coming very soon. We should be doing a beta launch for that in March or April. Was it April or March? God willing. God willing. All right. So, okay, I think that's it for housekeeping. So let me go over here real quick and get my bio for Linda Holt, today's esteemed guest, Linda Holt. Who doesn't know Linda Holt? Well, you might not, right? She is a professional photographer turned decor expert and interior designer, right? She's been on the podcast. She's on episode, I want to say 12. And Linda, I have lost your bio.
Oh, you know what? It's okay, Darla, because I'm going to introduce myself in my presentation.
No,
so
I found it. I found it.
My name is fine. That's all you need.
Here we go. I found it. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. Linda Holt is no stranger to merging her creative eye with her aesthetic appeal, and she has worked with more than 5,000 celebrities, actors, and models as one of Boston's top headshot photographers. Today, she uses her skilled photographic eye to help homeowners and designers create a stylish, fresh, and relaxed home that is reflective of their unique personality and lifestyle. So here's the thing with Linda. Over the past few years, she's put aside her heavy DSLR cameras, and now she shoots, no joke, exclusively with her iPhone and her Samsung phone, smartphones, hence this webinar. She's become an expert in both smartphone photography and smartphone editing. After successfully teaching smartphone photography workshops in and around Boston, she created an online class for interior designers, stagers, and creatives. Stay tuned to the very end. You're going to get some more information on that. She's a highly sought after speaker. She's spoken at live events, Design Influencers Conference. I'm giggling because you know what we like to call that, the acronym. The Multifamily Unit Summit and America's Mart. She's presented over a dozen online webinars for groups for High Point, Aspire Home and Design Magazine, and ASID. Wingnuts, help me in welcoming Linda Holt to our first webinar in the webinar series.
Thank you so much, Darla. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're ready for that?
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Okay.
There you
Okay,
go.
everybody can hear me and
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so here we are. 5 smartphone tips I'm going to share today to achieve magazine-worthy images. So I know everybody is at a different level with their skill level, but my intention today is that everyone that's taken the time out of their day-to-day will walk away with at least one thing that they can apply right away to improve their photos. And the 5 tips that I'm going to go over is number 1, how you can use your smartphone more like a professional digital camera or DSLR. Why it's so important to get your lines straight and the best way to do that. A few tips for mastering the interior lighting. I know as designers, many of us struggle with interior lighting. A couple of tips on how to photograph people like a pro. And the last one, I'm going to share my 2 favorite editing apps. So let's get started. For those of you that don't know me, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. Darla pretty much wrapped it up, but I was a professional photographer for 25 years. I was the owner of, I went back to school in 2008 when we had the first recession to go back and pursue my second lifelong love, which was interior design. And I opened up Linda Holt Creative in 2011. I've been a smartphone photographer since 2014 and the creator of the course Smartphone Photography for Interior Designers and Home Professionals. I am very easy to find. I am on social media as Linda Holt Creative pretty much everywhere. So you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. I am Linda Holt Creative. Now, this is just a quick example because I wanted to show you where I started. This is what I did back in the day as a professional. Mostly I did performers, actors, models, singers, and I did their commercial headshots. I also had a few fashion accounts. I shot for 2 different men's underwear company, as you can see, Jake and Company, which I'm sure Jake is long gone at this point. And I shot for Charles River Apparel, and I would do celebrities. That gentleman on the left is actually Robert Ballard. And if you might have heard that name, he discovered the final resting place of the Titanic. So back then, when I was doing that kind of work, what you see on the left is what I had at my disposal. I had multiple cameras, lenses, light boxes, backgrounds, light meters, reflectors. And honestly, it took all of that to make those photos. Now today, what you see on the right is what I use exclusively. I actually no longer even own a DSLR camera. I gave it away years ago. So I am dependent on that. And you might think that when I first started taking photos with my smartphone, that they would at least be somewhat decent, but I'm going to go ahead and bear it all and show you what they looked like. And they looked like this. Honestly, they were so bad, you would never have guessed that I had been a professional for over 20 years. They were dark, they were crooked, they were out of focus because I had no idea what I was doing. I was using my phone as a point and shoot. If it came out okay, then wow, I was great. And if it came out like this, it was because it was a crappy cell phone camera. But then I had almost what I would describe as a life-changing experience. I went to a seminar and heard a woman speaking on how to get better photos with your iPhone. And she, on the screen behind her as she was speaking, had about a dozen magazine covers, everything from Coastal Living to Martha Stewart Home and Country Cottage. And she told the audience that she had photographed every single magazine cover using her iPhone. Well, I almost literally fell off my chair because this is what my photos were looking at like at the time. But what it did for me was I came home totally determined because I thought if she could get those kind of shots, I could get those kind of shots. And I went home and I learned everything I could. I watched YouTube videos, I bought classes, I read blogs, and I finally figured out how to use my phone. Now today, I am very proud to show you my cell phone photos because they look like this. I do all my own shooting now. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to do this right out of the gate, but with practice, honestly, you can. So let's get into my tips. Tip number 1. One thing that really makes the iPhone, sort of different is that you have the fixed lens. But If you have a newer phone, you can use your smartphone more like a digital camera. And there's two features that you can do. One is you want to always get in the habit of setting the exposure and the focus manually, because professional photographers never take their big digital camera, or rarely put it on automatic and just shoot and assume they're going to get great photos. They always set the exposure and the focus. And if you have a newer phone, portrait mode and telephoto lens are absolutely great for mimicking, a longer lens on a digital camera. So to set the exposure manually, and I'm going to talk about the iPhone first, and the next slide is the Samsung. There's two ways you can set the exposure on the phone. Number one, you can tap your finger on the screen where you want the light meter to set the exposure. So for example, I tapped it on the pillow here. You can see that yellow box that says to the camera, this is where I want the exposure to be perfect. Or you can hold your finger anywhere on the screen till you see that yellow box with a little tiny sun icon to the right. And then by sliding your finger up the screen, you will lighten the overall image. And if you slide your finger down the screen, you will darken the overall image. And on a Samsung, or the Pixel, whatever you have, it's very similar, but instead of a yellow box, you're going to see a yellow circle. And then by sliding your finger either right or left, you will overall darken the image or overall lighten the image. And if you look at the slides, you'll see the yellow circle. And if you look below, you'll see a little bar with the circle. That's what you slide left or right. You can see in the middle one, I slid my finger all the way to the right, it lightened the image. And in the image on the far right, I slid it all the way to the left to darken the image. And it's a similar action with setting the focus manually. On the iPhone, the image on the left, you tap and hold your finger, and that yellow box is going to start to blink. And when it stops blinking, you're going to see a yellow box up in the top border, and it's going to say AEAF lock. That stands for auto exposure and autofocus is locked. This is really valuable because if you're shooting inside and you're hand holding your phone and you're not real steady, once you lock on something, even if you move the phone slightly, whatever you locked on will still be in focus. Similar to the photo on the right, which is the Samsung, click on that yellow circle, hold your finger there, and then again, that is where the focus will be locked. So why use this? Why is it such a big deal? One way I use this all the time, if I'm in, say, a long family room and there are drapes way on the back window, but I want to get the whole room in the shot. And if the drapes are beautiful and I really want the drapes to be in focus and I don't care so much if the foreground's a little fuzzy, I will lock the focus on the window treatments so I know that they will be sharp and clear. And vice versa, maybe in the foreground, there's a custom $600 beautiful pillow that I want in focus. And I don't care about the drapes. They're just way in the background. I would lock the focus on the pillow. So when you allow the phone to pick the focus, you never know what the phone is going to focus on. And generally it will pick a middle spot and it may or may not be where you want the focus to be. And the other way I use it, if I'm photographing outside and it's a windy day, and I think we've all experienced sort of that shaking of trying to hold our hand still. If you just lock on your subject matter, your hand can shake and the subject matter will still be in nice, sharp focus. So setting the exposure manually, I think, is something a lot of people don't do. I know a lot of people now definitely understand about lightening and darkening the image, but setting the focus is very important as well. Now, the second way you can use your smartphone, more like a digital camera, is to shoot in portrait mode. So for this mode is on most of the phones. If you've purchased a new phone within the last 2 to 3 years, you're going to have portrait mode. You don't need to use it just for people when you're shooting a portrait. What portrait mode does is it has the foreground in focus and then it will blur the background. So for example, if you look at the image on the left, this was done in an antique store, see how busy that is. And I shot that with the regular 1x lens. So everything is in focus, including like way in the background, the right there, which is a bunch of clutter. There's some artwork that is sort of takes your eye too. But all I really wanted to focus on was the china and maybe, you know, the vases. So I switched it to portrait mode and look at the difference. It just makes for a much nicer, visually appealing photo to blur the background. Now, if you have one of the really new phones purchased within the last year, the great thing, and it's both on the Samsung, the Pixel, and the iPhone, you can control the blur even after you take the photo. So maybe you want the background really blurred, and maybe you just want it slightly blurred. You can have full control over that when you go into editing in your photos. And another time I use portrait mode a lot is when I'm at one of the like at High Point or Market, because you know how busy those showrooms are. When you try to take a photo of something, you'll see everything in the image if you're using your normal lens. However, putting in portrait mode, focus in on the subject matter, the background will be blurred. Again, much nicer for posting on social media. The photo on the left, in the background was a wall of lighting. It was so distracting, but by, again, throwing it in portrait mode and blurring the background quite a bit, I focused on just this antique piece that I wanted to focus on. And in the image on the right, those bowls, that's what I really wanted to post on social media. I didn't care about all the rugs that were hanging in the background. So my viewer's eye will go to the bowls or to that little statuette and not the lights in the background or the rugs hanging behind. All right, the next way, besides portrait mode, again, if you have a phone within the last couple of years, you will see either one or two lenses on the back of your phone. This means you have an optical zoom lens. So let me explain what this means. The photo on the left is the iPhone. The one on the right is a Samsung. That is the iPhone 11 and I forget the model Samsung, but if you have three lenses, you will have a wide angle, which is 0.5. You'll have the normal lens, which is the default lens. That's what your camera will open up to every time you go into a camera, and that's the quote normal lens. Then you'll have either a 2.5 telephoto lens, or if you have the brand new iPhone 13, you'll have a 3.3x telephoto lens. This is just like swapping lenses on a digital camera body and putting on a longer lens. When you click on to one of the different lenses, say the 2.5 or the 3, what it's doing, the camera is shifting to a totally different lens that is specifically made for shooting telephoto. So things become closer. This is optical zoom. So when you shoot an optical zoom, you're going to get a nice clear photo. You're not going to get any degradation of your phone. You're going to get nice, sharp photo. So if you want to get in closer, just switch to one of these optical zooms. And with a longer lens, it's going to compress the background, and it is going to mimic what you would see if you had a digital camera and put on a longer lens. This is when a great time to use it. The photo on the left was a little vignette I wanted to get. That was shot with a 1x lens. Now, normally, if you wanted to get a close-up, like the image on the right, what we've always done in the past is walked in really close to get a closer shot. The problem with doing that on any smartphone is your 1x lens is actually a wide angle lens. So if you know about digital cameras, the 1x lens on your phone is sort of comparable to a 28 millimeter, and that's a pretty wide angle lens. And what happens with wide angle lenses is you get distortion. The lines are going to start to bend. They're going to converge or diverge. But if you switch to the telephoto lens, you can actually back up, which is what I did for the photo on the right. There's no distortion of the lines. Look at the lines over here, the window frame, nice and straight. The lines are all straight. Had I walked in close, these lines would have started to bend inward on both sides. And I think everyone that shot with a smartphone understands what I'm talking about when you see those crooked lines. So if you have a telephoto lens, always use a telephoto lens if you can, rather than walking in really close to get a close-up shot. And here's one more example. The photo on the left, taken from the doorway of the bedroom. I wanted to get just sort of this little vignette for Instagram. I had my back against the wall and I switched to the 2.5x lens and there's no distortion. Look at the bedside table here. This line normally that might be a little wonky is nice and straight. No distortion here up by the ceiling. Had I walked in closer, I would have had to have stood pretty close at the end of the bed to get this. There would have been distortion. Now, if you if you have an older phone, like you have the iPhone 8 or 7, and you don't have one of the telephoto lenses, never, ever zoom in by pinching your fingers out. This is not optical zoom. This is called digital zoom. And all digital zoom does is blow up the pixels and degrades your photos. It's not really zooming in, it's falsely zooming in by blowing up the picture. So if you do not have a designated optical zoom, which is a separate lens, and you want to get closer, then this is the case where you have to walk in closer. So zoom with your feet, not with your fingers. If you have an older phone, you have no other option but to, really get in closer. And if you do have one of the newer phones, the iPhone has a wheel. So if you hold your finger on one of your lens indicators, this wheel pops up and you can turn this wheel all the way up to 12x. And in the Samsung, they have a slider. You can slide that baby all the way up to 30x. All you're doing, it's the same thing as digital zoom. They've just given you a little gadget thinking that you're zooming in. It is the same thing as pinching out with your fingers. So it has gotten better, but if you are going to use this, just be aware your photo is going to be compromised. The pixels are not going to be as sharp. But sometimes if you're doing a landscape and you're trying to get a snowy owl that's 100 feet away, you don't have an option, no other option but to try doing it this way. You'll get a shot, it'll be what you want, but it's not going to be high quality. All right, tip number 2, the next most important thing about smartphones is you want to try to get your lines straight. Now, I already told you, you can help with straight lines by using the telephoto lens rather than getting in really close. But there's 2 other ways. Number 1, you want to hold your phone correctly. And number 2, you want to use the in-camera grid, which is an indicator to help let you know that you're holding your phone correctly. So let's talk first about how you hold your phone. You always want to hold your phone on the same level as what you're photographing. So, for example, the photo on the left, I was standing up and I'm tall, I'm 5'10". I was holding my camera at eye level, but because this chest of drawers that I am photographing was down more like waist level, I had to tip my phone down. And here's where you get the problem with the lines. You can see how the lines start very wide up here, and then they start going inward. And same thing, it looks like there's some distortion on the chest versus this photo on the right, nothing changed at all except my camera angle. Rather than holding my camera up by my chest so I could see the screen, I held it down about waist level. Look at the difference. There's no distortion, nice straight lines, no distortion on the chest. So if you get a photo like this, you can fix it. You have to go into editing. You'll have to fix the perspective. But why waste the time when if you just simply hold your phone on the same level as what you're photographing, you're not going to need to fix it in editing. And I have one more example here. Again, the photo on the left. I was holding my phone up by chest level so I could see the screen. So the camera lens itself is probably shooting at about the bottom of that mirror. And I showed that with a red dot. Again, look at this distortion because I had to be pretty close. This was a small scene. Look at the wall. This is the distortion that I'm talking about. And the chair is distorted. The little table is distorted versus over here. Again, nothing changed. This one, I actually got on my knees to do this one because this was low. And I had my camera lens at about the same level here as this red dot. Again, look at the difference. Look how different the nice straight lines here. Over here, you can see the wall is even bending inward, whereas here it is nice and straight. So always hold your phone on the same level as what you're photographing. Now, there's an aid inside your camera called the grid. And the grid can help you know if you're holding your phone on the same level as what you're photographing. So here's two photos. Photo on the left, taken without the grid. And I honestly thought I was holding my camera pretty level, but you only have to be off a tiny amount and you can see what's going on here. It's not level at all. Here is the same photo taken with the grid on. Now, the grid is a series of horizontal and vertical lines, and once it's on your camera, leave it on. You can then line up one of these grid lines to something in the shot that you know is nice and horizontal or vertical, and you'll get a nice straight shot. Now, if you don't know how to turn the grid on, it's the same on every camera, no matter what you own. You just go into settings, scroll down and find camera in your settings. And then when you click on camera, you'll get another screen and scroll down until you find grid and toggle on the grid. I just bought the iPhone 13 and the grid is now on by default. And I think this is the first camera I've owned where I didn't have to go and turn it on. But the older phones, you do have to turn it on. And also, just one more thing I want to say, don't worry, this is not going to be on your photo. This is a screenshot of my screen so I could show you the grid lines. The grid line will be on your camera screen, but it will not be on your final image. And not only for doing interiors, but even when you're outside, I think one of my pet peeves, and I see this all the time on social media, are uneven horizon lines. Line up your grid line, which I indicated by this red, to your horizon, because even if the horizon is off a little bit, the photo just looks a little bit wonky. And with inside, I use door frames, windowsills, cabinetry. I've even used picture frames if I know that they're level. And I try to match up as many things in my interior as I can find with my grid. And I really heavily depend on my grid, and I usually get pretty good lines, whereas I know friends have told me that's the biggest thing they struggle with is the lines. Moving on to tip number 3, master the interior lighting. There's 2 things that I want to share with you today about this. You always want to time your shoot. And number 2, if you remember nothing else from this presentation, it is turn off the lights. And I'm going to explain why. But let's start with timing your shoot. When I say time your shoot, what you want to look for as you're designing the room or wherever you are, is you want to look at the light as it comes in the room during the day. And the best time to shoot an interior is when the light is still bright, but it's even light. So in other words, you don't want to shoot when you have any kind of hard, direct sunlight streaming through a window. So you always want the room, again, still be bright, but no hard sunlight coming in. I worked for several years for a local home magazine, and I didn't shoot the interiors for the featured homes that they showed in the magazine, but I had to book the photographers, and we used the top interior photographers in Boston. And when I would call them to book the shoot, they would always ask me the exact same question, knowing that I was a photographer, and they'd say, when do we want to do the shoot? Sometimes it would be 7 in the morning. Sometimes it would be 3 in the afternoon, but they never want to shoot with sun coming in the window. They want to avoid it as well. So you want to follow the professionals with what they do, and they want to time it for when the light is nice and bright and even. So this is the problem if you are shooting when you have sun coming to the window. So this is a scene, you have 2 choices. You can either, tap your finger to expose for the shadows, or you can tap your finger and expose for the highlights. Neither of these is a good option. So the photo on the left, I think I tapped my finger and held it on the table base. Table base looks okay, but look what happens to everything else. Those highlights are totally blown out. And once you blow out your highlights, there's no bringing those back in editing. It is gone. Photo on the right, I tapped my finger on the window to expose for the highlights. Window, okay, if you care about the window, but look what happens to the shot. Everything else goes totally dark. So this was photographed at 9 in the morning. The sun comes streaming in the window. The next slide is shot 4 in the afternoon, the sun is on the opposite side now, and look at the difference. All I did was wait for the light to go to the other side of the house. No lights, no artificial light, no strobes or anything. This is just with my cell phone camera. No hard light coming in the window. Nice, even lighting, like night and day. All right, number 2, always turn off the lights. The problem with artificial lights is the same thing as the sun coming in the window. It's hard lighting. And when you have the lights on, you're going to get blown out hotspots all over the image. And again, once you get these blown out highlights, there's no fixing that in editing. It's impossible because there's no information there to work with. So you always want to turn off your lights. And even if the lights aren't showing in your image, like in the shot here, I turned on the overhead lights. What's going to happen is you're going to get a color shift. So if you look at the image on the left, I turned the overhead lights on. You can't see them, but look what's happened to the photo. Because there are warm bulbs in those overhead lights, there's a warm cast, like a yellowy pink on the walls, on the fabric, on the rug, on everything. And you still are going to get these shadows, like over here next to this topiary and the candle holder here. All I did, I stayed in the exact same position. I switched the light switch off. Look at the difference. It is color balanced, 100% color correct. I don't have to go into editing. The shadows have disappeared. The color is spot on. Again, such a simple shift, turning off the lights. One more example. I did a job for a friend of mine. She's a wallpaper designer. Look at the image on the left, the overhead lights on, the one on the right, the overhead light off. Which one do you think she wanted to use for her portfolio? Obviously, she wanted it to be color correct. This one has that warm cast. This one is true to color as how it should be. Now, I know I can see everyone asking in their mind the exact same question. What do you do if there isn't enough light to turn off the lights? Well, I'm going to show you how to handle that. Here's the bathroom in my condo. It's an internal bathroom. There's no windows. This is what it looks like without the lights on. And the only light coming into this room is from the window, maybe 25 feet away from this on the opposite side of the bedroom. But this is how it looks. So you think, well, there's no way you can photograph this without turning the light on, right? But look what happens when I turn the light on. Again, you get those blown out highlights. The shot is ruined. There's no bringing that back. So this is how you photograph a dark room. You have to invest in 2 things, a tripod and the phone adapter. Tripods, $19 on Amazon for an inexpensive one. Phone holders, $7.99 on Amazon. Then you put your phone so it will be steady, because this might be a 5-6 second exposure. This is how a professional shoots. They have their camera on the tripod. They have a long exposure. And so that just a little tip, so that you don't even have to touch the button to expose it, set the timer, and then there'll be no movement at all. So you can get a nice sharp photo. So you just want to manually set the exposure. So as you're getting set up, you tap your finger on the phone, slide your finger up the screen to make it as bright as you want it if it's an iPhone, or slide your finger to the right if you have an Android. Get it so it's exactly how you want it. Set the timer, walk away, and this is that same bathroom shot like that. Now, is this great? No. Would I use it in my portfolio? No. But as a little 2-3 inch square on Instagram, it would be fine. And this was shot with my iPhone 10. And I don't know what everybody is watching this webinar on, but if you're on a large screen, you'll be able to see that the pixels have all sort of started to fall apart. It's like all mushy over here, and the cabinetry is a little mushy, and it's also a little off color because this was probably about a 8-second exposure. However, if you have a newer model iPhone or Android, you will have something called night mode. This is revolutionary for shooting in low light. Honestly, this blew me away, and it's a reason to upgrade your phone if you don't have night mode. You don't have to do anything to activate night mode. The camera will automatically detect when when it needs night mode, and it will turn it on. And the next slide, look at the difference. So there we have the one on the left, the iPhone 10, the pixels have kind of started to fall apart. The one on the right, shot with the iPhone 12 with night mode. I would absolutely use this in a portfolio. It is sharp as a tack. The pixels are good. The color is spot on. So that is just how far phones are coming. And every single model they come out with, they're getting better and better and better. All right, moving on. Tip number 4. Let's talk about how to shoot people like a pro. My number one pet peeve is you want to always check your background. Now, I am sure that the person taking this photo of my young friend here did not say to him, oh, stand right there. It looks great. There's a palm tree going out of your head. There's a balled up jacket to the right of you. And there's a happy little couple taking a cell phone photos also that's very distracting. I guarantee you the person taking this photo didn't see any of that, because the human eye has evolved so that when we are focused on a specific subject, we don't see all the distraction around us. This was actually a survival technique as we were evolving off the savannah. It's encoded in our DNA, because if we were focused on hunting a prey and we were looking at that prey and then we saw a bird fly by and we noticed the grass moving and we saw something else in the background, we would have quickly lost sight of our prey. We would have starved out. So those people that looked at everything are gone. And we are descendants of the people that could focus in on something and ignore the background. So it's because of years of practice that I immediately see this when I'm taking the photo, but most people won't. So what you want to do is, after you take the photo, just quickly look at your back of your phone, look at the photo before the person walks away, and you'll immediately see it in the 2-dimensional. And you can just tell your subject, move to the left, move to the right, or you can move. I don't know who these people are. I pulled this off of Instagram, but if this poor gentleman had seen this, it looks like he's about to be beamed up to outer space. Had the photographer looked at this on the back of their phone screen, they could have moved the whole group to the left or the right, because this is really, really pretty comical. And it doesn't even happen to amateurs. This is from a magazine. And did nobody notice that this model had antlers growing out of her head? It's actually the branches from the trees out the window, but it appears just like antlers. So it's common. Just check your background and try to get a nice clean background. Either put it in portrait mode so you'll get a blurred background, or put them against something solid, or have something so far behind them or blurred that the focus is on the person, not on something that's growing out of their head. Now let's talk about indoor lighting, because I know that is a real challenge, especially if we're at a trade show like High Point or Vegas Market, or if we're at a conference or out to dinner with friends. I want to specifically address inside lighting. And inside lighting is just like the sun, it's just hard lighting, and hard lighting casts dark shadows. It's very unflattering lighting. And when we are inside, the light 9 times out of 10 is coming from the ceiling. So it is angling directly down on our heads, and it causes black circles, raccoon eyes, black shadows under the nose. So unflattering. So this is my son's girlfriend in the middle. That'd be bizarre if it was my husband's girlfriend. My son's girlfriend, and it was her 30th birthday party, and she rented out a brewery in Boston, and all of her college friends came down to celebrate her 30th birthday. And I watched as another one of her college friends took this photo. Let's not address that the photo is not composed well and there's an exit sign and it's just not very attractive. Look at the light on their face. This is because the overhead light was shining directly down on their head, and their eyes are really like black sockets. So after their friend took this photo, I asked her if she would email me this photo. Then I asked the girls if they would just stay there a minute while I took a photo. So this is my tip. If you are going to take a photo of your friends like this, look at their eyes. And if you see this, dark sockets and dark shadows, ask your subject or your group to slowly start turning around in a circle. And as they turn around, keep your eye focused on the light around their eyes and see if there isn't one position they can face that maybe is better than another. So in this case, I could clearly see what was behind them, which was a big source of natural light, which is always flattering. And it was soft natural light because there was no way the sun was coming through there. So I asked the girls to turn around 180 degrees, and this is the shot. Again, just with that natural light, I just turned them around. We got a much nicer background rather than all the people behind them. So just give it a moment's thought and think about, where could I have them stand? And if you're somewhere in a restaurant or something like that where there's just no good place, then wait and just step outside or just anywhere. If you're going to use the photo for social media, nobody wants to post a photo with dark circles under their eyes. All right, getting near the end here. Tip number 5. I want to talk about how important it is just to get in the habit of using a few editing apps. Now, I know a lot of people like to edit on their phones, and if that works for you and you're comfortable with that, fine. I started using a couple of different apps years ago when the phone editing app was not that good, and I still use them to today. So on this photo on the left, I took this down at high point. You can see I didn't get down on my hands and knees to take this photo. There's some distortion here. It's a little bit dark. Plus there's some price tags thrown here on the coffee table and back here. So when you're in a rush like this, you're not going to take the time to compose every single shot perfectly. So that's why you want to master a couple of editing apps. So literally it took me 30 seconds. I used 2 different apps, which I'm going to share next. I lightened it up. I got rid of the tags, fixed the perspective. And this one on the right is the one I posted on Instagram. So these are the 2 apps I use. Everybody has their favorite apps. I'm just sharing the ones that I really like. I've been using them forever. The first one is Snapseed. It's free. It's by Google. It works on any phone. And then Touch Retouch is $2.99, but it is worth every penny. Touch Retouch does one thing and one thing only. It removes unwanted objects. So when we are taking a photo with our smartphone and we're rushing or we're not, being perfectly composed about it, we're going to oftentimes have photo quality. Could be lightness problems, darkness, saturation is not right, contrast is off, or it could have perspective problems, which I've talked about a lot, or again, removal of unwanted objects. If you're getting an update on a construction job you're doing and you're taking a behind the scenes shot and you realize that you missed, somebody left a Dunkin' Donuts cup on the countertop, Touch Retouch can instantly remove that in a matter of a second. Or maybe there's a dog toy left on the floor in the living room you're shooting and you didn't see it. That's what I used that for. So I'm just going to show you 3 really quick images, how they came out of the camera and what editing did to them. The one on the left was a little bit dark, but I wanted it dark because I knew I could lighten it up in editing because I didn't want to totally blow out the windows. So I intentionally shot it like that. The one on the right is a friend of mine took this photo. And remember how I said earlier that you always want to have the camera on the same level as what you're photographing? Well, in this case, unless she was willing to rent a cherry picker and get 25 feet up in the air, she was going to have perspective problems. So I fixed this for her just by straightening out the house and pulling it a little bit forward. And then this image on the right, this big patch in the road was a little distracting, as well as this dark shade. It was taken, I guess, at noon or something. So let me just show you the afters. The one on this first one on the left, it was dark. I lightened it up. I also boosted the contrast on the Roman shades there just a little bit because that's how they looked in the room. They looked a little flat and a little bit dark and not saturated enough in the before editing. This I did in Snapseed, and it was 2 commands. I lightened it and I boosted the contrast. It took literally seconds. This one here, again, I did all of this in Snapseed. I used the perspective tool. I pulled the house forward so it didn't look like it was falling backwards. And then I used the rotator to straighten it up. And then there's a tool in Snapseed called the selective tool, where I selectively brightened up the front gardens and this doorway, because I did lighten up the entire image a little bit, but the doorway, even with getting the house to look like this, was still black. And the gardens were still really dark. So I used the selective tool to fix that as well. That was all done in Snapseed, took maybe 60 seconds. Again, before editing, the one on the left, just wanted to remove that. This was actually for a construction company. Wanted to remove that patch. I put it into Touch Retouch. And with Touch Retouch, you just trace your finger over what you want to remove. I traced the dark shadow. I traced the patch in the road, hit go, and it looked like that. So wrapping up, let's just do a quick summary here. You want to use your smartphone like a DSLR camera. You want to get in the habit of adjusting the exposure and the focus manually because professionals shoot that way. And you can use portrait mode and the telephoto lens to mimic a DSLR camera with a longer lens on and get a really nicer photo. Focus on getting your line straight by holding your phone on the same level as what you're shooting, and turn on your in-camera grid and leave it on. That will really be a nice guide for knowing that your lines are going to be straight. Master the lighting. Time your shoot. Pick the time of day where it's still bright enough in the room, the light looks pretty even, there's no hard sun streaming through the window. It's just too contrasty to get a shot if it looks like that. And if you are forced to shoot in a situation like that, the only way you can do it is to bring in supplemental lights. And then always, always, always turn off the lights. In fact, it used to be that interior designers would, photographers would turn off the lights where realtors would leave the lights on. It is all switched now, and now realtors, if they are good and on top of their game, realtors are all turning the lights off now. That is a big change in the last couple of years. When you're photographing people, try to avoid that overhead lighting if possible. But if you are stuck with that overhead lighting, ask your subjects to turn around and see if you can find a spot where the light on their face looks better than another, and then get in the habit of using a couple editing apps. You know, it's always sort of 3 legs to a good photograph: composition, lighting, and editing. And a lot of people are afraid of editing. It is so easy. I do everything on my phone, and it's scary. I know in the beginning, if you've never edited, it can be overwhelming, but if you just play around with it a little bit, I'm the most non-techie person on the planet, and I have figured this out. And I was so, overwhelmed when I first started it, but it actually is pretty easy. All right, so the last thing I do want to talk about is this little seminar I just did here is about 5% of what's in my course. So for any of you that have stayed on, I do have a special offer for the next 48 hours only. Anyone that purchases my class will get 1 hour with me of one-on-one coaching. And I charge $400 an hour. So this is like getting the class for $97. You can do whatever you want in that 1 hour. I can guide you through editing, although there's 7 different editing modules in the class, but I can critique photos with you. I can help you with composition. It can be used however you want. And I'm also throwing in 3 bonus modules that I have as a bundle, as an additional, which is how to manage a large photo library, how to quickly and easily find an old photo in a large library, and understanding photo storage, because there's 2 kinds of storage. There's device storage and there's cloud storage. That was confusing to me until I learned it. So for 48 hours, the $9.95 value for $4.97. It's only the 48 hours that I'm offering the private one-on-one coaching, but with the code WINGNUTS, you can purchase the class, use that code, and get the 3 bonus modules at any time. And this, you can screenshot this. This is the link to go to the sales page to buy the class, but you can also, it's just as easy to go to my homepage on my website, click on the class button on the top right, or you can go right to my Instagram account and go in my link tree, and the link is right there too. Awesome. And just, I really want to say you guys can do this. It's just practice. But the 2 biggest reasons why, I really want to empower you to take your own photos is you will own the copyright. You can use your photos as you want to. You don't have to get written permission or sign long contracts. And the cost of the class, really, it's a fraction of what it costs to hire a professional, even for a morning. So I hope I can help you guys all out. And that leads us to questions.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm telling you, so many tips that I was unaware of, and like my millennial fiance also unaware of. So we have a lot of questions. Some of them are repeat. There's 34 questions in the Q&A. So many people commenting. Thank you so much for this information. And just this alone, this free course is mind blowing. If you guys want to take it to the next level, take her up on her 48-hour offer with Kiefer Sutherland there, 48 hours. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Before something explodes. Okay, so here's some questions. Let's see, some of them are repeats, but here's one from Gloria. Gloria asked, can the degree of blurring be controlled while taking the photo with a newer phone?
You know what? I don't think so, but I'm not positive. I actually purchased the iPhone 13 Pro Max. It came yesterday, and I haven't even activated it yet, but I think you might be able to on that, but you can definitely do it when you go into your albums. And if you pull up the image at the top right, it'll say edit. If you click on that, you can do it after the fact. With the iPhone 13, and I'm just going by what I have seen, is I believe you can adjust. I know you can do it when you're shooting video. Whether or not you can do it when you're shooting a still photo, I don't want to give the wrong information because I'm not sure. And actually, I should say that if you're buying the iPhone version of the class, I have one for older models, the iPhone 10 or older, and then I have the iPhone 10 and newer. And within the next week, I'll be adding a brand new module with all the features of the iPhone 13 as soon as I can get that done. Hopefully within the next weeks, it'll be there once I get it done.
Yeah. Oh, here's a good, I love this question too, Lori. Lori Super asked, what if you're shorter than average? Is it necessary to adjust it all to get the correct plane, higher than waist level, etc.?
You know what? If your phone is tipping either up or down, you're going to get wonky lines. So if you're really small and you're going to be shooting something that's tall, put a little footstool in the back of your car. I actually know several photographers that are that do that. They keep a footstool in their car, but I have to get on my hands and knees because I'm so tall, and it's not very easy for me to get on my knees right now since I just had a knee replacement, but that's why I had to have a knee replacement because I've been on my knees for half my life taking photos. But yeah, you do want the phone to be on the same plane as what you're shooting, if at all possible. Otherwise, you can just go in and fix it in editing with a perspective tool.
And here's one from Amy Hassan. Sorry if I'm butchering your last name. When in portrait mode, do you change the different lighting choices for, like, example, natural light, studio light, that kind of thing?
I think that's all gimmicky. I personally don't do it. Play around with it. It's just kind of a fun. There's a lot of things on the phones that I think are more like kitschy or hobby, and I don't really like any of the lighting. I like the natural one, but you can use I have used the black and white one can be kind of interesting, but it's just like using a filter. People are always asking me to use filters. When I'm doing anything related to interior design, I never use a filter. I want it to be color correct. I don't want it to be vivid. I don't want it to look like warm. You want it to be color correct. If you're doing something, a landscape photo, a portrait, go for it. Just find whatever you like. Do it if it's an artistic thing, but for interior, you want to keep it clean, you want to keep it color correct, and I would not use funky lighting or filters to change the quality or the color of the image.
Excellent answer. There's quite a few questions as to how do you change the lenses between for iPhone and Samsung. Just really quick, because
when you go into your camera along the bottom, it will say 0.5, 1x, and then depending what model you have, it'll either say 2.5 or 3, but that's only if you have a camera that you've purchased within the last couple of years that have the lenses. If you have one lens on your phone, you're stuck with that one. That's a 1x lens. If you have 3 lenses, then you're going to have a wide angle and a telephoto. And you just click on the bottom, it will have the little numbers. When you click on that number, the camera will switch to that lens.
Okay, and Regina Correa is asking, regarding turning off the lights, is there a solution for a place without windows? And I know that powder rooms can be challenging in that area. What do you
I missed the last half of that question, Darla. Say that again.
Regarding turning off the lights, is there a solution for a place without windows, no natural light?
Yeah, that was the bathroom that I showed. There was no natural light, no windows in that. So again, tripod, adapter, set the exposure manually, set the timer so you're not shaking the camera at all, it might be a really long 5-6 second exposure, but with the night mode, it's probably going to be a second exposure and you'll get a great shot.
All right. And there's so many questions here, Linda. We can, I think Alicia, we can send Linda these questions so she can follow up if there's anyone else she wants to reach out to. We're running out of time here, so I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us on this webinar. Again, if you joined late, this is going to be a monthly webinar series. Make sure you tune in next month, same time, same bat channel, for Stacy Martin's her formula for developing rockstar presentations that get her a 95% approval rate from her clients. Right? I know.
That's incredible.
I know, no revisions, none of that, song and dance, pain in the butt stuff that, as designers, we all know the nightmare so well. Linda Holt, thank you so much for joining us. All the information is up there. Follow Linda on Instagram. If you didn't get her link, we'll be emailing you out a follow-up email with the links to sign up for Wingnut Academy, for future webinar announcements with these links that Linda shared you today. So don't sweat it, don't worry, that's all going to be coming your way if you registered. Make sure you do sign up though for future updates, because we're not going to spam you just because you signed up for this. We have to have your permission for that. And the Wingnut Social podcast, don't forget to tune in and check that out. There's all kinds of great information there on wherever you get your podcasts with these kind of guests, as excellent as Linda. Moving forward. And don't forget Wingnut Social. We are a digital marketing agency for you guys, the interior designers, the architects, and adjacent verticals. Real marketing, real results. We're not just throwing up pictures and hoping people come to your website. We have real metrics. Go to wingnutsocial.com and check out the case studies to see that, and check out our reviews. The proof is in the pudding there. So yeah.
Darla, thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone. I know how valuable everyone's time is, and I'm so grateful that everyone took an hour out of their day today to tune in. So thank you. I hope everyone learned something. Darla, I'm so grateful you invited me to do this. It was fun, and thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you. You were brilliant. Thank you so much for joining, guys. We'll see you on the podcast and see you on Instagram. All right.